Hey hunters, Lord here, back with another Monster Hunter Wilds video. In today's video, I'm going to be bringing you guys my official review of Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, Capcom were kind enough to grant me early access a little over 2 weeks ago at the time of this video going live. I want to first of all thank you guys, my community, for supporting my videos and channel to help me reach a point where I'm able to be blessed with such an opportunity. As a Monster Hunter enjoyer since my middle school days back in 2008 on my good old PSP, I really can't put into words just how special this was for me, and I owe it all to you guys and your continued support. Now with that being said, I'm going to be going over my general positives and negatives about the game, with neither of those categories really going in any particular order, just kind of however I wrote them down during my playtesting. So hopefully this review will help you guys get a feel for what to expect on the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds, or at least help you guys make a decision on whether or not you want to get the game at launch. So be sure to stay tuned to the end for my official LordViettner rating, but with that said, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. So some slight prerequisite information before we jump into the actual review. So at the time of recording my review, I've had the game for a little less than 12 full days, and I've put in over 115 hours already. Yes, it's that good. With a lot of that being hunting, testing all 14 weapons a multitude of times each. I also managed to hit Hunter rank 200, completed over 400 hunts, and much, much more. I tell you guys this not to brag or anything, but just so that way you guys know that I have played this game in and out and have done my best to get as much knowledge and experience as is humanly possible during that short period of time in order to get my review ready for you guys. Now I do want to note that I did receive the copy of Monster Hunter Wilds for free. However, Capcom is not paying me to say anything nice about their game. They're actually not paying me at all, so I'll be doing my best to remain as unbiased as possible. However, as a huge Monster Hunter fanboy, I will always be very excited when a new Monster Hunter game hits the shelves. Another quick note, there is a limit on how much I can talk about and show you guys, including a maximum of 20 minutes of my own recorded footage within the game. So if this video goes over 20 minutes, I'll be using some of my footage from the open beta testing, and overall I'll be doing my best to keep my footage as spoiler-free as possible. So after many late nights and innumerable Red Bulls consumed, here is my full review of Monster Hunter Wilds. So to start out with the positives I had in Monster Hunter Wild, these are things that just stood out to me. They're in no real particular order. Starting off, I think the smithy functionality in Monster Hunter Wilds is incredible. The wish list and recommended upgrade features are absolutely fantastic tools to use as you progress through the story, and I'm a huge fan of the overall weapon and armor crafting here in Wilds. Everyone who played Monster Hunter World will be very happy to hear that there are no crappy slap-on weapon designs, which is a nice return to form. I know Rise had good-looking weapons, and Wilds does follow up Rise in that category with very good-looking weapons, very good-looking armors, and just overall good design choices. The combat is a ton of fun. I think each of the 14 weapons feel absolutely incredible to play. The monsters are extremely fun to fight. I really don't think there was a single bad fight among the entire roster. Genuinely, I feel as if there are no bad weapons either. I think they nailed it with the pre-launch weapon changes. I gotta tip my hat to the devs on this one. After playing around with some of the weapons on the beta, they felt a little weak, but in the full game, there are definitely some weapons that are super strong, but there are no weapons that are weak, none at all. Even the quote worst weapons are still able to get very good clear times on any monster in the game. Each weapon also feels like it stays within its own niche, so that makes playing and testing and trying each of the 14 weapons very rewarding. It adds to a dynamic experience and helps the replayability of not just the game as a whole, but even if you're farming the same monster over and over again, playing a different weapon type will make that hunt feel very refreshing. As for one of the biggest new features, Focus Mode, I have to say that I'm a huge fan now. I was very iffy about it when it was first announced and shown, as I thought it could be a little too, quote, easy mode. However, after playing for over 100 hours with Focus Mode, I have to say it's just fantastic. Having the ability to readjust mid-combo or mid-attack really does make Wilds combat super fluid and crisp, And while you may whiff less than in older titles, actually being able to hit the monster where you want to hit it and not miss or clip a wing when you're trying to hit the head just feels like it's going in the right direction. For me, it's certainly less inclusive than having to use the clutch claw to tenderize like in Iceborne, and they've added some features and skills that I can't discuss in depth that make it so it's not always your best practice to immediately focus strike a wound when they appear, which I really like. So overall, after using it for the time I have, I really can't imagine this game without it. The monster roster is incredibly diverse, so the story progression never really feels like you're doing the same thing twice in a row, the same with endgame farming. And farming materials in general is just great because of this diversity. We've been talking in the review Discord, and some of the older games were just Wyvern Simulator, and that's no longer the case. There's so many different monster types and types of fights. Really, it's just peak Monster Hunter. I haven't felt a Monster Hunter game with this much base game diversity in a long time, and it was definitely a very nice breath of fresh air. Again, I averaged nearly 10 hours of playtime per day leading up to my review, on top of working my normal 9-to-5 job during the day, and that would never happen if this game wasn't just a tremendous amount of fun. Now, the hunter notes are fairly well fleshed out, not quite as good as Rise, but it did make it very easy to know how and where to get materials I needed throughout my progression. Dodging felt very good in this game. I know that's a little weird of something to bring up, but I don't know if they increased the iframes on dodging or not, but it definitely felt like it. But even if they did, it's still extremely rewarding to be able to roll through attacks or roars and smack that monster right in the face with your weapon. Overall, whether they changed it or not, it feels very good in this game, and I'm a fan. Quest posting was incredibly easy to do, and the load times for me never exceeded about 10 or so seconds, except sometimes when I was joining a multiplayer quest with someone on the other side of the world. But to me, that's to be expected. My internet's not that great anyway, and that's a long way for information to have to travel, especially pre-launch servers. The new 3D map is absolutely amazing. It has all sorts of information and filters, pretty much anything you'd need as far as monsters or gathering points go, as well as a whole lot more. I think the pop-up camps are an absolutely great addition. Having the ability to customize where your camps go on each map makes the hunting experience that much more fluid. And once I did get my favorite camp setups for each map, I never really had to spend a ton of time on my Sacred just to get to the monster to start a hunt, making that farming of materials super efficient. Speaking of Sacreds, I think these guys rock. Being able to heal or sharpen or just swap to Discord to message someone while I'm riding to the monster is just a real treat. I'm definitely a fan overall. I think these guys rock. The performance for me was even better than the benchmarking tool and significantly better than the beta. I was able to record and stream to Discord all at the same time while maintaining my FPS in hunts. With no frame generation, I was able to easily stay above 60 FPS, usually sitting around 80 FPS and sometimes going higher. So compared to the beta with no frame generation, I was getting the same or better frame rates than the beta. The Hook Slinger, I feel, is a great addition to Monster Hunter Wilds. It makes it super easy to gather everything you need as you jog by on your Sacred headed towards the monster. It makes gathering things like honey or herbs or flash bugs just a total breeze. Overall, I'm a big fan of this gathering system rather than having to head out on a gathering specific quest in order to get the materials I needed. This just helps it flow better. You can just do it all while you're hunting monsters. Even still to this day at Hunter Rank 200, when I'm chasing around Ray Dow back to his den, I'm grabbing all of the bugs and all of the herbs I pass by. It's just very fluid and easy to do. Another huge positive are the return of the pause feature in single player and having skippable cutscenes. However, as far as the story goes, this is definitely the most engaging and interesting Monster Hunter story I think we've ever had, and I would definitely recommend watching all the cutscenes on your first playthrough without skipping them. I thought the characters were actually fairly engaging, and your hunter having voice lines just makes it that much more immersive. You actually feel as though you are a part of the story. You're not just controlling this guy who's nodding at everything anyone says, and I'm a big fan of that. The side missions in this game are also very good. There's plenty of variety among the quests and a lot more focus on the core hunting aspects, but with some of that extra Monster Hunter goodness sprinkled in here and there to really cement that core experience. Now, the weather effects lasted significantly longer than they did in the beta, and the monsters, outside of a couple story missions where they move around to help show you the map, tend to stay in one area much longer as well. I really never, at this point in the game, have a monster leave more than twice, and this was a big concern of mine, and even though they said it wouldn't be as bad as it was in the beta in the full game, I was definitely a little skeptical till I saw it with my own eyes. But as we know all too well, the Monster Hunter team just doesn't miss. The new food system is definitely different, but overall I felt like it was just as engaging to try and get your ingredients, if not a little more so than the last two games. The overall progression of the game felt very solid. I never really noticed myself falling behind or quests at the next difficulty level taking an absurdly long time or killing me over and over again. And while the overall game is definitely not the hardest Monster Hunter of all time by no means, there are a couple of relatively difficult hunts, even in the story, that still slap me up from time to time as I learn them, which I greatly appreciate. I know everybody's going to say at some point when a new Monster Hunter game comes out that it's too easy, it's so beginner friendly, but there are some difficult hunts in this game, and I of course appreciate that. Now, the skill and set diversity in Monster Hunter Wilds is amazing. I can't talk too much about it, but there are so many options for builds for each of the weapons, which again just helps with the overall build diversity and continued replayability of the game as a whole. Another huge positive for me is that the monster sound design and the music in this game is so good. I'm a massive fan of the different monster noises and their themes. Honestly, it just was banger after banger after banger. Now, although I can't share much more about this, the final high rank endgame grind is definitely my all-time favorite for any base Monster Hunter game at launch, and high rank as a whole is just great. Again, I can't talk too much about it, but just know it is a ton of fun and there is a lot more to discover after getting through low rank. Alright, so a small change of plans. I already had this video fully recorded, and now less than 48 hours before I'm allowed to drop my review, we had some new information revealed at the PlayStation Play event in Japan this past weekend. So I am now allowed to discuss a little bit of the endgame here in my review. This is the only spoilery type part of the video, so I will have video chapters here in the video so you know where to skip to if you don't want to know about the endgame. So the basic endgame loop centers mostly around the newly revealed tempered monsters, which are returning from previous games, but in a different way. Overall, I really love these hunts, and while they're a lot of fun on their own, they have a much greater chance of dropping our high tier armor and weapon decorations, as well as relics. Relics are used in the endgame quite often to craft a new type of weapon called Ardian weapons. These weapons are customizable by using a different spread of relics, and can be boosted to even greater power by using certain materials. The best way to farm both decorations and relics is by using the investigation feature, which allows you to find monsters on your map and save them for later to hunt up to 3 additional times. I have a much more in-depth endgame guide coming to the channel that will release after the game comes out on Friday. So if you want to know all of the ins and outs of how the endgame works here in Monster Hunter Wilds, definitely subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss out. I don't want to give too much away, but again, like I've already said, the way that this endgame grind works is absolutely my favorite in any base Monster Hunter game at launch. I'm a huge fan of it. The replayability is insane. The Ardian weapons are a ton of fun to mess around with and min-max. And I promise you we're going to have a ton of fun set building and crafting these once Wilds releases, so I hope you guys are just as excited as I am. Multiplayer is a ton of fun as well, and even though we had some connection issues, which I'd just chalk up to pre-launch servers or playing with people on the opposite side of the globe, you could easily rejoin a quest if you get dropped with no issues. The health scaling for monsters felt very good, so hunts weren't insanely long or short in multiplayer. And there's a decent bit of nuance with the different multiplayer features, but once we figured it out, we were grinding away with no real issues. Actually, one more quick thing that I do want to mention is that with all of the new multiplayer features, you do not have to worry about sitting for 4 hours while your buddy watches his story cutscene and then he has to sit and wait while you watch your story cutscene. Once you join the correct link party, you guys will be able to just play through the story together with no real interruptions. And I think that that is a massive, massive point to make here, as I know that the co-op world story system was a huge frustration point for a lot of hunters. The new open world map feature is also super sick, as there's plenty of diversity in the areas where you will hunt monsters, as well as a lot of those typical little nooks and crannies to explore to your heart's content. Finally, the Palico and Support Hunter AI is actually really solid in this game. Now, I didn't use the Support Hunters a ton, but when I did, they were getting mounts and offsets and power clashes, and they overall just focused on the right areas and weren't too overwhelming or taking anything away from my experience. And my Palico seemed to always know just what I needed, to a point where, when I was doing co-op hunts with Fightin' Cowboy, we actually turned off the Support Hunters on our SOSs, so that when it was just the two of us, we could keep our Palicos. They're just so clutch here in Monster Hunter Wilds. Absolutely love the Palicos here. Now, there's probably a million more things that I could gush over and shout the praises for in Monster Hunter Wilds, but those are just some of my top things that I really loved about my time with Monster Hunter Wilds, and to keep this video from getting too long, I'm going to cut it off there. Now, as far as the negative goes, I just have a few real big ones, so let's go ahead and hit those first. Now, up first, and I know I just said in the positives that performance was very good, but I did have some slight issues with dropping frames when first going into a base camp at a couple of the maps, as well as a few times in the Scarlet Forest when there were multiple big monsters in one area, and sometimes in the Windward Plains' main open area, but usually that was only when there were like 50 small monsters, and I'm not kidding, 4 or more large ones all being rendered at one time. This was by no means a deal breaker, and realistically was probably happening like 1% of my total time in game. And while I think a good day one patch and just continued support of the game over its life cycle will really get rid of all these problems, I did just want to mention it, however, for those of you who maybe have a lower end PC or a lower end graphics card, so you can keep it in the back of your mind. The next real genuine annoyance I had were the little ledges all over the place. One example I can think of off the top of my head are the little peaks of the dunes in the Windward Plains. I'd often find myself fighting right near that peak, and I really can't even tell you how many times I go to roll through an attack, and instead I jump off the top of the dune or a little rock ledge, lose my iframes, and get absolutely bitch slapped by the monster. This, honestly, was the most infuriating part of the whole of my 115 hours, but I have to say, if that is as bad as it gets for me, I think we're going to be okay overall here in Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, my final real issue with the game is that some of the quality of life we've come to expect with World and Rise seems to be missing from this game. For example, you can see what your food skills do with the 3 ingredients that you use to cook, but you can get more than just those food skills. But we couldn't find a way to see what those extra skills did, and to me that was just really annoying. And another example is that there's no way to copy lobby IDs anymore. This seems like a super weird choice or oversight, since the multiplayer features are even more in-depth than any other Monster Hunter game. Why do I have to type out the full character lobby ID? Just let me open up multiplayer, click a copy button, and paste it to whoever I need to send it to and be done, instead of having to type all the characters, realizing I hit 6 instead of 5, having to change that, whatever. That might sound nitpicky, but I love hunting with friends and doing open lobbies with you guys, and just being able to hit the copy lobby ID button and then paste it was far easier, and we know they can do it. They did it in Ryzen World, so where is it in Wilds? Now, these next few negatives are just me nitpicking to find more stuff here, and overall they're not game-breaking, they're not a huge deal. However, in a few of the base camps, the handler Alma can wander around, making it really annoying to try and post a quest. However, you can always post directly from your tent, and you're probably going to be going in there anyway to cook or restock on items, so this isn't a huge deal to me. Next, the cutscenes in this game look amazing. It's almost like watching a movie. No, not you. Get the out of here. Anyway, but when someone wants to talk to you outside of a cutscene, it'll zoom right in on them during the conversation, and they look a little janky. Now, that could have just been my graphics settings, but I was running mostly high settings, so I doubt it. For me, it's more likely that the cutscenes are just so good looking that any other up-close interaction with the NPCs just can't quite compare. And finally, as you might guess, this game has low and high rank. However, once you get to high rank, your open world maps will always be set to high rank, so even the small monsters will spawn as high rank monsters. So say you've been playing Greatsword the entire time, you've reached a point where you want to branch out, try some other weapons, and you're trying to get some low rank parts to start that weapon tree. Instead of just being able to go out to a low rank map and farm up some small monsters for their low rank parts, you'd instead have to post a low rank quest, then go into that quest, find the small monsters, kill them there, and then finish the quest. Again, it's not game breaking, but it is just a little annoying to have to go out of my way to do that. So with the positives and negatives discussed to their full extent here, what are my final thoughts on the game? So after my time with Early Access, I would give Monster Hunter Wilds a resounding 9 out of 10 great Jaggies. Please bring him back, please, please, please. If they can fix the performance hiccups here and there, as well as continue to support the game with new event quests and title updates, I believe this game will be a solid 10 out of 10 for me. Now, whether it's the best Monster Hunter game of all time or not is entirely up to you and your experience, but if you thought that Monster Hunter World was a huge jump for the series, I promise you that Monster Hunter Wilds is a full Olympic triple jump in the right direction. It brings enough of the expected core Monster Hunter experience to keep you engaged, but offers just enough new features to keep you in that, whoa, this is Monster Hunter sort of state of mind. As a hunter for nearly 17 years now, I still felt like I was able to learn and get better with the new mechanics and the new fights, which is always one of my favorite metrics to gauge how good any game is, let alone my favorite franchise of all time. So no matter if you're a long-time veteran, if you're brand new to the series, or you fall somewhere in between, Monster Hunter Wilds' fluid combat, engaging story, and incredible replayability will have you coming back for hundreds or even thousands of hours after launch. So if your PC can run it, or if you're one of those smart guys who owns a console and you don't have to rebuild it every so often, then the official LordViettner recommendation is buy Monster Hunter Wilds. You will not regret it.